All right, welcome to Microscopy VR. This tool is a VR microscopy three-dimensional plus time dataset visualizer and analyzer. So what you can do in this particular tool is open volumetric datasets such as light sheet datasets with up to 3 channels and 3 colors. You're going to be able to also track object into it. And so I'm going to go over a little demo of the entire tool stack. Right, so we are gonna have your data sets that are gonna be loaded here, right? If you want to add a data set, for example, so I'm gonna actually erase this one by just overwriting over it by keeping the same name. So you just go into your location that you want to save your data set. You then go and choose your microscopy dataset that you want to use. This is only for big data viewer format files for now, XML HDF5 file format. You're going to select it, right? And now here we have the minimum assets. So we can also add a tracks dataset, and we're going to do this in a second by just creating a new track, a new file. But first, I'm just going to show you the microscopy visualization. Without the particular tracks. So if I click on my datasets, it's loaded here, a little preview, it has little settings, and I can just adjust all of those settings if I need to. And then at the bottom, it shows us that we only have a volumetric datasets. We don't have any tracks or any masks loaded, and masks are not supported just yet, but will be in the future release. And so you can load your data set. It became green, a little green icon telling you this is good. And a little capsule has actually appeared here, right? And if we take the capsule, if we look inside, we actually see that there is our data sets, but it's pretty faint. So let's load it. So we load it onto the stand, right? As it says here, place the dataset capsule here. You place it here, and then it's going to load. And here we have our data set that appears in front of us. But once again, the image is pretty faint. So how do we change this? We can go to dataset settings, and here we have our volume rendering settings where we can change the image intensity, right? And so we can adjust this, and this is a bit better. But now we can see that the nuclei are a bit fainter than the actual membrane channel in this particular dataset. So we can go into the channel settings and adjust the intensity by increasing the nuclei intensity. But now this is very overblown, so we actually need to have some sort of a contrast adjustment setting, and this is what's here with the stretch, right? So if I increase the stretch now, right, I can set the stretch, and this is going to then take the lower value and the higher value and make this into a bit of a nicer contrasted image with transparency, right? And so I can actually keep increasing the nuclear channel and stretch a little until I'm actually satisfied that I can see all the nuclei, even the sort of faint one. And if I need to go a bit lower, I can, and I can just come back to the setting if I need to adjust it at any given time and point. And so I'm actually going to increase a little bit of the stretch for the membrane as well, which gives it a bit of a nicer look, and increase a little bit of the intensity and a little bit of the stretch again. Yes. So now we have this very faint sort of glitchy-ish little effect, and this is the image quality, and we can increase this a little bit, but don't go overboard with this because this is going to be very heavy on your GPU, so you don't want to go too crazy with this, right? You can also, of course, change and just have just one particular channel or just the other one, right? You can just choose your channel settings up as you wish. And this can be useful if you want to just track the nuclei setting, the nuclei channel, or if you want to adjust the stretch value for just one particular channel with the other one being in the way, right? All right, and so this is basically how you're gonna adjust your particular microscopy channel intensity settings. The next step is going to be to use the control panel. So the control panel, you can either point your lasers at the handles to just bring it towards you, right? Or you can just grab it using your hands by the handles to just place it wherever you want to place it, right? For example, I could place it here. Now here you have the resolution, and you can increase the resolution or decrease the resolution of the data set. Once again, this is also sort of a dangerous setting, because if you increase it too much, your computer might go out of memory if you don't have a very powerful computer. And then you have the time point, and you can have a little time point control button where you can just move time points back and forth by just clicking on those buttons, right? And then you have a little play speed icon and a play button. If I click play, it's gonna autoplay and let the data set move, and so you can just watch the movie of a developing embryo. Right, and so the very first time you're going to play the movie, it needs to pre-cache and load all of the images. So it might just take a bit of time before each frame appears. But once this already has been done, then you can actually increase the play speed to the maximum, which right now just sort of froze the entire thing because it's pre-caching everything. But if I pause it and then I go back to the very beginning and I click play, right, then the movie goes a bit faster because it has pre-cached the entire little slice of the data set that I've done here. And so in a similar manner, if your computer is not powerful enough, it might not be able to pre-cache the entire data set. But if you have a good enough computer, this shouldn't be a particular problem, right? So this is how you use this tool for just microscopy visualization. But the more interesting aspect is to actually do some tracks and look at tracks and annotations. And so the first thing is, how do you load tracks onto this particular tool? So the first thing is I'm going to unload this dataset by just pointing at the floor and clicking on this capsule, which is loading our dataset back. And so it has saved our settings, right? Like our settings that we had are now saved. And so I'm going to just put it back here, or I could have just left it in the room, but then I'm going to basically remove it, which unloads it from the room. And I'm going to erase it by just going over it once again and just selecting our data set and or microscopy data set. But now I'm gonna add a Mammoth XML tracks file, right? So I'm gonna click select, and this is going to tell me to wait, because now what it's happening in the background is that it's converting the Mammoth file into my own internal standard for tracks, which is something like 1,000 to 10,000 times faster to load and manipulate than the Mammoth native format of files. And this is important for loading and fast interaction with multiple thousands of nuclei if needed. And then when it's over, it tells you, okay, I finish, and you can click the create button. And so once we have this, we have my data set, and once again, I can load it. And as you can see, this has added now a little track icon. So I click load, and this has loaded our data set. It becomes all blue, so we can grab it, put it back onto our stand, and then it's going to load our data sets. Now the difference is we have those little white dots now here, and those white dots, what they are actually annotations, track annotations, spot annotations, right? And so the new thing that also appears is here we have this thing called track settings, and track settings has just very few settings. The first one is just to activate it, so I can just hide them or let them appear, and I can use it as a spot or as a circle. And the circle is nice if you want to keep seeing sort of through your annotations. You can also increase the track length, right? Which is now going to show you your length of the track, and this is in time forward mode. I can go to time backward mode, and now everything disappears until I start to move forward in time. And then, basically you have your backward time tracking like you would have in any other tracker. And you can also use the both option, which will basically show you both backward and forward and have your spot in the center. So let's keep it to backward for now, and go back at 0. And we are going to go and just adjust a little bit of the intensity setting for this particular dataset. And I'm actually going to hide the membrane. So I'm only going to keep the nuclei sitting. All right. So now I only see the nuclei and I see the annotations. All right. So if I go forward in time, I can basically see, my annotation over each of the nuclei in time. And this is nice, and I can see what annotation I've done in Mammut. But what's even better now is that we can also go in this part of the room and grab our tracking tool. So our tracking tool, right, has a screen that basically have a bit of information in it and is going to help us track cells in through our data set, right? And one of the things that I'm going to do to be able to see a little bit better is I'm actually going to point at this projector over there, and I'm going to click on it, which is going to activate the black curtain. And this is going to help us see a little bit better and not have distractions from the background. I'm also going to increase the size of our data set so that it's a bit easier to track, right? Now, because I've already tracked most of this data set, I'm actually going to go forward in time all the way to a time where I don't have tracks anymore. And so we're going to need to wait just a little bit for the image to keep caching and load. And because we've used the slider, it's going to load a bunch of images. All right, so it's arrived here. As you can see, the microscopy, the images here is a bit less intense. So we actually need to first do a little bit of an adjustment in our channel settings. So I'm going to increase the intensity to the maximum. And I'm going to decrease the stretch value just a little bit. All right, so this is actually a good example of sort of a low quality because this is like sort of further in time and it's a bit harder to see, but you can still see pretty well in 3D, and follow cells, especially if you go into black mode. All right, so let's take, for example, this cell over here. So this one. So in our tracking tool, the first thing is if I use the trigger, I can then add an annotation, right? So now I've added an annotation for this particular cell. And if I go forward in time, I can go forward and backward in time by using the right and left arrow of the joystick. And so if I go forward, if I go forward in time, I can then click and add an annotation. But a little bit better is, what if we could do this sort of automatically? So if you press the menu button, you see that on the left you have an auto time change. So this button on the left allows you to time change automatically. And on the right, you can choose the direction, time forward or time backward, right? So if I wanted to track backward from this particular cell, for example, that I have here, I could just do this. So if I click to select it, then I go backward in time and I click on this cell and then this cell and then this cell and then this cell and this cell. It's going to go back in time and do the tracking for me, right? And it's going to show me my track that I just did, right? And so I can continue, for example, and I can just keep tracking it all the way until I have reached my annotations that I had here. Boom. And then I just click the last one and this adds an auto link because I have the auto linking feature turned on and I can turn it on and off, right? So this is how you can track in VR, and this is extremely fast. This is like hundreds of times faster than doing this on Mammut, right? So if for whatever reason you have a cell that is selected and you see it here, it's a selected node, and you would like to deselect everything, just stay pressed on the trigger until you see the menu appear, release in the emptiness, and now selected is to none. And so I can come here and select this particular cell, for example, to keep tracking from here. Go back to menu, change the time direction to forward, and now I'm tracking in time forward. I go here, and then I just keep clicking onto the cell. It goes here, goes here, goes here, 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 right? And your eyes just track those cells in 3 dimension in a very trivial manner. Like your eyes just know where did that cell go, right? It went here, it went here, it went here, right? And so you can just keep tracking. Okay, now what happens if you actually have mitosis? Let's try to find a cell division. It's not a cell division. Let's try to find a cell division somewhere. No. Well, let's just pretend we have a cell division somewhere. So I'm going to unselect and say that this cell here was to divide into this cell at the next time point. So I would just select the previous time point, go to the next time point, click, right? And now we have this Y-shaped track, right? And so I can just then keep tracking the cell, right? And that would basically be this mitosis that would have happened here, right? This is how you basically would do it in any other tracking tool, is you can come back in time, then choose to select a particular time point, and then decide that then this is a branching at some point from this particular time point, right? What else can you do? Well, if you don't actually like this position, you can go on it, stay pressed with the trigger, it's going to turn yellow, and then you can move it to where the cell is, for example, because you maybe missed the cell, and then you're like, oh, actually, this was over here. And so you can change it. But actually, maybe you don't even want this, so you can grab it, select it, and here you can then delete it by pressing the left joystick. And then press left joystick, it's deleted. Let's delete that one as well. And this one actually, well, the annotation, the circle is a bit tiny, and I would like it to be bigger compared to this. So I can grab it and then increase the radius until it's actually, encompassing the whole cell at the right size. If this is important to you, you can just change the radius. Then finally, say I'm happy with this and I would like to save. I can go into the menu, and if I press in the center of the joystick, then I have the save button that goes into orange when it's saving, and then it's going to turn green when it's finished saving. All right, and this is basically how you can track in VR. It's much faster, much more efficient, and allows you to follow cells with your eyes and in 3 dimensional in a very accurate manner, because you know where you're touching in a 3D dataset. And with this was the presentation of the first sort of alpha of Microscopy VR.